at the bottom. The first fight is Matt Schnell versus Marco Beltran, and to me, this fight could go either way. Neither guy has looked super impressive in the UFC. These guys are both like, they have skills everywhere, but they're not great anywhere. They've both been finished quite a bit. I'm gonna go with Matt Schnell just because I feel like he looks a little bit better overall. But like I said, neither of these guys look super impressive, and I don't know. Like I said, I'm gonna go with Schnell. I think he just looks a tiny bit better overall. Next is Thales Leites versus Brad Tavares. This fight is really close. I think that this is one of those fights that's going to come down to that middle round. I think Thales Leites is probably better overall with his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling, but his conditioning isn't great. If he could keep that pace for 3 rounds, I think he'd be able to win this fight pretty easily, but Brad Tavares is way better at conditioning, and I think he's way better at setting a higher pace. I think that Leites is going to win the first round, Tavares is going to win the third, and this is going to be kind of like that fight that Leites had with Krzysztof Jotko, where if he gasses by the second, I think Tavares is going to win this 29-28, and that's kind of how I think this is going to happen. I think if Tavares keeps a high pace, he'll be able to kind of get the minor upset and win a close 2-round 29-28 decision. Next is John Moraga versus Magomedov. I don't know how to say this guy's last name, but Magomedov is a really, really good wrestler, and to me, John Moraga has not looked very good recently. He won his last fight against a guy who couldn't wrestle for crap, so that isn't that big of an accomplishment in my honest opinion. I think this is completely different. He's fighting a guy who's a really, really good wrestler and who's a really big up-and-comer. He's like 13-0. So I'm going to go with Magomedov. I think he's going to be able to hit takedowns whenever he wants and probably win a decision. Next is Walt Harris versus Mark Godbeer, and to me, I feel like Walt Harris likes to strike with guys, but I think he's got a huge advantage in the grappling department in this fight. I don't think Mark Godbeer is that good on the ground. His takedown defense is okay, but I don't think it'd be good enough where if Walt Harris really wanted to, he could take it to the ground. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Walt Harris is going to want to strike with him, and I think even there, he's going to have an advantage with his speed and, length. I just don't know how Mark Godbeer is going to win this fight, so I'm going to pick Walt Harris to win by TKO or decision. But once again, I think if it's on the feet, it could go either way just because Mark Godbeer has the good one-punch knockout power. But I'm still going to go with Walt Harris. I say he wins by knockout or TKO in the second. Next is Pearl Gonzalez versus Paulina Botelho. And to me, Paulina looks like a decent up-and-comer, and so does Pearl. I haven't seen either of these chicks fight enough to know how good they really are. I'm going to go with Pearl just because she's already had her UFC debut, and she looked decent in that fight. Even though she lost, I felt like she purposely fought someone who's way better than her in that fight. But I'm going to go with Pearl. I say she wins by submission. Next is Bobby Green versus Lando Vannata, and to me, Bobby Green has looked questionable for the last year or two. I feel like he keeps on talking about retirement, and he keeps on looking not as good in his more recent fights than his earlier UFC fights. To me, Lando Vannata's looked good in every single UFC fight. I mean, even though he's 1-2, you look at the 2 guys he fought, David Tamar, who's got like 100 kickboxing bouts, and then fucking Tony Ferguson, and that other Canadian guy who's a really, really good striker. It's like all he's fought is really badass strikers, and he looks really good against all of them. And, I think that's what's going to happen in this fight. I think Lando Vannata is the up-and-comer guy, and I think he's going to be able to just use his speed. And, the fact that he looks way more willing to fight at this point in his career than Bobby Green, I say Lando Vannata eventually lands a big strike and wins by knockout. Next is Will Brooks versus Nick Lentz. And to me, this is going to come down to wrestling. I think whoever has the stronger wrestling is going to win this fight, because I've seen Nick Lentz control and dominate people, and vice versa. I've seen people do that to him. I think Nick Lentz can keep a strong pace. And to me, Will Brooks has kind of not lived up to what I think a lot of people thought he was going to do. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be in the top 10 really quick, but I said this about him when he came in. He's literally the Neil Magny of lightweight, and there's nothing wrong with being a guy who's well-rounded everywhere. The problem is that he's not great anywhere, and against guys who are real specialists, they'll just fuck you up, just like when he fought Charles Oliveira. A real specialist in jiu-jitsu is going to take you down really quick and submit you, and I don't think that Nick Lentz is a real specialist. I mean, he's a good wrestler, but he's, not... He's got skills everywhere, kind of like how Will does, but he's not necessarily great anywhere. It's really tough just because, like I said, I've seen Nick Lentz go both ways with his wrestling. I'm going to go with Nick Lentz just because I think that at lightweight he's going to have more strength and endurance. But you never know. Like I said, I've seen Nick Lentz get dominated wrestling-wise a bunch of times. So this could go either way, but I'm going to go with Nick Lentz. I say he wins by decision. Next is Tom Dickenzie versus Cody Stamann. And Tom looks like a really, really good up-and-comer from France. He's like the first up-and-comer from France in forever. As where Cody looks like a really strong wrestler with some pretty good boxing. I think Tom, though, has the big speed and power advantage when it comes to his punches. I also think his jiu-jitsu game is pretty good. I think it's going to come down to conditioning, and I haven't seen Tom fight for a long period of time, so I have no idea how good his conditioning is. Cody looked really good in his debut. He looked like he had really strong conditioning. But like I said, I think that Tom has too big of a speed and power advantage. I think that once they start trading, Tom's going to be able to hit him a little harder and a little bit quicker. And I think eventually he's probably going to win by TKO or maybe submission. I'm going to say late second. Next is Beneil Dariush versus Evan Dunham. And to me, Evan Dunham's looked really amazing in his last 5 fights. I think he's won 4 or 5 in a row, and he's looked really good in all of them. And he's already fought Beneil's teammate, and in my opinion, he won that fight. I know a lot of people thought that too when he fought RDA the first time. You know, Evan Dunham, I feel like, you know, Beneil Dariush is kind of just like a shittier version of RDA anyway. I feel like he already knows how to fight this type of fight and win it. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think he's going to do what he did against RDA, and I think he's going to win a correct decision this time, 29-28 for Evan Dunham. Next is Mara Romero versus Kathleen Dara Ferreira. And, crap, I can't remember. When I looked this up, one of them is Brazilian and one of them is Italian. And, my bad, guys. But the Italian chick, to me, just looks like she's okay. I can't, you know, to me, she just looks like she's feeding the Brazilian chick. Like I said, I can't remember. I had it written down, but I forgot to write it down. The Brazilian chick, I think it's Mara, is, you know, she's really, really good. You know, her, what's it called? Her record's like 18-5, and she's fought really good chicks. I feel like the Italian chick, she's 11-4, and she's lost to a bunch of nobodies in general. So I'm going to go with the Brazilian chick. I think it's Mara. I think, you know, I don't understand why this fight's on the main card. It's really fucking annoying, especially when you look at a lot of the fights on the undercard where there's guys who have kind of worked their entire career to be on main cards like this. You know, they have 10+ fights in the UFC. And to me, you can say whatever you want. When you're on the main card, you're more likely going to get, like, more fans and stuff because the people are going to see the main card. They're not always going to watch the undercard. So I don't understand why. I said this a bunch of times, but I don't understand why guys, like I said, who have worked their whole careers, like Will Brooks and Evan Dunham, Nick Lentz, are on the undercard when they should be on the main card over this fight with 2 chicks I've never heard of before I looked them up. But either way, like I said, I think Mara's the better chick overall, and I think she's going to win by knockout or TKO. Next is Fabricio Verdum versus Derek Lewis. To me, Derek Lewis, you know, I know he just retired and then he came back and he didn't look that great in the Mark Hunt fight. Like, he put up a fight, but I felt like Mark Hunt was able to see everything he did the whole fight and just dodge all the big shots. To me, the fact that he's, you know, at that point in his career, I wonder how strongly he's invested in this fight overall. I also feel like Fabricio Verdum was like 5 seconds away from knocking out Overeem, and then he made a big mistake in taking it to the ground. I felt like he was just a dumbass right there at the end of that fight. He could have knocked him out. Like, he had him hurt really bad, and he was super gassed. He just made a mistake. Like I said, I think just at where these guys are at in their career, I think striking-wise, they're probably about even. I mean, Derek Lewis probably got more knockout power overall. But I think grappling-wise, you know, Derek Lewis is pretty decent on the ground, but he hasn't fought anybody at this level. And like I said, just where they're at in their career, I'm going to go with Verdum. I say he wins by submission. Next is Demetrius Johnson versus Ray Borg, and I said this the last time we did this. I mean, nothing's different. I think that the only way Ray Borg wins this fight is if he takes Demetrius's back. I think aside from that, Demetrius is better everywhere. I think he can make the weight easier, that's for sure. So I don't think he's going to get tired in the later rounds like Ray Borg probably will. Either way, I got Demetrius Johnson winning this fight by decision. Finally, we got Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee, and to me, Kevin Lee is exactly like Ray Borg. I don't think his boxing is that great. He's never knocked anybody out, and I've seen him get rocked a bunch of times in every single fight. Like, even against Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa rocked him really quick with one shot. I think he has technical boxing, but it's not great. I think Tony's got a huge advantage there. I think Kevin Lee has probably better wrestling overall than Tony, but Tony's probably better overall on the ground. I think the only way Kevin Lee wins this fight is if he takes Tony's back. And I think Tony's not going to give it up like Michael Chiesa did. Either way, I think Tony Ferguson's better overall, and he's going to win by knockout or submission sooner or later. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.